Well, Happy New Year. The Blues defense has looked really good in recent weeks. Honestly, has looked better than ever. So, what has led to these defensive improvements, and can this team make the playoffs with a defense this good? And before we go today, we'll talk about a memorable Winter Classic Blues victory over the Blackhawks, all that and more on today's episode of Note News. Happy New Year, Alec. 2025.
Yeah,
You're really out here.
we made it.
How was the Winter Classic? We'll talk about it later, but you were there, of course. We've been excited for it like since we started Note News. Um, just like in a word, how was it?
Crazy, but awesome.
It's a pretty good
It
one.
was, yeah.
Yeah, it was obviously a an amazing game. An exciting victory for the Blues. We'll talk about that towards the end of the episode, so stay tuned for that. Um, but today we're here to talk about the Blues defense, which has looked really, really good in recent weeks, particularly really just since Jim Montgomery took over, has looked fantastic. And we'll sort of get into why that is, what the stats are, and we'll pair some analytics with what I like to call the good old fashioned eye test, and talk about how this defense has been performing and can it get the Blues to the playoffs. Vibes are kind of high right now in the new year, so we'll get into all of that. But before we do, if you're new to Note News, we'd appreciate if you would like this video and especially subscribe to our YouTube channel. That helps us out a whole lot. And if you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, follow and rate the podcast wherever it is you listen. We're also on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok, as you can see over on this side of the screen, at Note News Pod. So follow along with us there. We'll post upcoming guests and episodes and when we're going live and all that. So that's a great way to follow along with us. If you are joining us live, let us know in the chat what you think of the Blues right now here in the new year. How are they looking? What do you think is the reason for the defensive success lately? But yeah, let's go ahead and get into it. Alec, the Blues defense has looked really, really good in recent weeks. Just doing a quick comparison, uh, uh, Jeremy Rutherford over at The Athletic recently wrote an article sort of about the Blues defense, and just this one number jumps out like crazy off the page that I'll credit him for pointing out to me, but um, or I guess to all of us, not just to me, but in 22 games under Drew Bannister, so from the beginning of the season through November 23rd, team defense at 5-on-5 was pretty poor for the Blues. This is a pretty interesting number. They had the sixth most goals allowed per 60 minutes, so sixth worst at allowing goals with 2.89 per 60. But in 19 games under Jim Montgomery, so from November 25th through to the present day, of course, team defense at 5-on-5 looks much better. They have allowed the fewest goals allowed, or they have allowed the fewest goals per 60 of any team in the NHL over that stretch at 1.64. That is a huge improvement. What to you has been sort of the story? What has been the biggest reason for such a stark defensive improvement under Jim Montgomery?
I mean, the addition of Cam Fowler has definitely been a big plus for that,
Yeah.
but it really feels like there's less hockey that looks like they're a chicken running around with its head cut off. It looks like they're a lot more intentional with how they want to use defense to support offense and vice versa.
Hmm.
I think Drew Bannister, we saw under Drew Bannister, we saw a lot of like changing plays in transition that led to difficulties and that led to issues for goals against essentially. And I think now that we've sort of seen less of a, not necessarily reliance, but like less of an issue with having trouble um, having trouble like in transition, excuse me,
Yeah.
uh, versus now under Jim Montgomery, it feels like that the defensemen can have communicated better either with in practice or pregame with their forwards. So, for example, I know we've seen Cam Fowler, Justin Falk, and Scott Perunovich all sort of in the offensive zone play more offensively and play closer to the net. And usually you'll have a skater like Braden Shen or Dylan Holloway skate back and then like cover for them. And they've done a better job not giving up as many odd man rushes that way.
Mhm.
Also, additionally, I think that there's just been a overall better pairing into the year. Some of that comes with the addition of Cam Fowler, that Drew Bannister just didn't have the luxury to have a player like that.
Yeah.
Also, now we're seeing a more consistent deployment all across every pairing. So Broberg Falk seems to be set as the second pair. Parayko Fowler seems to be set as the first pair. And the third pair is still sort of mix and match, but for the most part is also set. And so with Drew Bannister, whether it was intentional or really just like we didn't like that was the only option, now we have a guaranteed answer as to what the pairs are, which allows them to play a lot more loose. And then finally, I think there's just been a change of personnel with like also Nick Leddy being out, Troy Krug being out. So all of it sort of it looks a lot different under Montgomery. And I think to Montgomery's credit, they've done a really good job supporting that defensive system. But I do also think there are some things that just sort of came about through circumstance.
Yeah. To me, it feels like the biggest change has sort of been a shift from what looks like a more static strategy, a more static style of play to something much more dynamic where like the big word to me is disruption, right? And instead of trying to just get in the way of like a shot or something, it seems like they're really being more proactive, more dynamic about like disrupting a set play or something like that. A lot of like poke checks, and it feels like they're tracking the puck really well, and they're not allowing people to sort of get into dangerous areas in the first place. They're sort of disrupting the plays before they even have a chance to get there, and that to me feels like one of the biggest changes under Montgomery. In particular, I'll highlight a couple other stats. Looking at scoring chances and high danger goals and stuff like that. So under Drew Bannister, right? So for that first month and a half or so of the season, the Blues were allowing the ninth most scoring chances against per 60 at 28.09. And now they've gone to the ninth fewest scoring chances against per 60 under Jim Montgomery at 24.96. So that looks a lot better. And then their high danger numbers look a lot better as well. They were allowing the 10th most high danger goals against per 60 at 1.36. That has gone down. They've got the sixth fewest high danger goals against per 60 at 0.95. So they're under a goal per game when it comes to like a high danger goal against. And that has been, I think, a really big reason for the defensive success to me. Anything to add there, just in terms of sort of the overall, like it feels like the overall strategy, like I said, is just disruption and dynamic puck tracking, things like that. But do you have anything to add on that?
Yeah, sure. I think you put it really well there. I think not allowing high danger chances has been such a massive difference for this team that just they were leaving their goalies out to dry. And now we've seen almost a couple chance or games where the goalies sort of left the team out a little bit, but I digress. So yeah, I think limiting those chances in the slot have been really, really crucial. And like more bodies in front of the net in a more intentional way, in a more, like you said, dynamic way, instead of a very static box that just you pretty much the defense could manipulate to however they wanted. It feels now that the box does move and change now with the movement of the puck, like you said, that puck tracking. So yeah, I think you teed that up really well, and it all feels a lot more fluid than it did under Bannister, which has been such a crucial component of this. I think this also to Montgomery's specialty as a penalty killer is he really knows how to take away space and how to make it a difficult task for the opposing team. And at 5-on-5, it seems like they really like to use that extra skater to just be a pest and to lay hits and essentially not make them want to stay in the offensive zone. I feel like they've been doing a really good job at limiting cycle chances, and the goals that they have allowed have either been because of like a lazy breakdown in structure, which can be coached out, or potentially slot passes or passes getting right through the crease, leading to like tap ins and or rebound chances. Which rebound chances, realistically, you can't do a ton to limit, but because they're just so random. But yeah, I think you put it really well, and I think that's the secret to this defensive success.
For sure. I think it's obviously natural to just jump right to the names like Pareko, Fowler, Broberg, Falk. Like, obviously, defensemen are a huge part of this conversation, but how good has the forward group been when it comes to defense? Like, I feel like, in particularly, Robert Thomas, of course, Pavel Buchnevich is solid defensively. We talked about it a little bit on last week's episode, sort of recapping the top 10 stories of the year last year, but Dylan Holloway has looked so good defensively. Like, how do you characterize this sort of contribution defensively from the forward group?
So actually, if you remember back in our bold predictions episode, I made one of my predictions was that the Blues would be a top half or some number team defensively, and I thought a lot of that would come through the forward group. I think that really underratedly, the Blues have a pretty solid defensive forward group. Pavel
Yeah.
Buchnevich has always been a plus defender. Dylan Holloway, as in his short stint, had been a plus defender, but now he's like a plus defensive forward. Braden Shen, we've seen seasons of good, seasons of bad. It feels more like a season of good this year. And then Jordan Kyrou is really taking a step up too. Those are all like really solid forwards at defending, and I think Kyrou especially has taken a almost that made that part of his game this year is turning takeaways into rush chances for himself or for someone else. But anyway, so yeah, I think the defensive play from the forwards has sort of always been good, even into the start of the season. I would say it was still really good. Now, there were some options, such as Pavel Buchnevich as a center, that were not quite as good as they have been. And now that everyone's sort of settling into their roles, and like, yeah, sure, some of the wingers are still not set, Saad, Holloway, Neighbors are kind of moving up and down the lineup. But for the most part, everyone is set. I think especially in that top six, you've got a really, really good defensive structure. Maybe even on the bottom line. I think just that third line is a little shaky.
For sure.
But the defense from the forwards has always been really good. They really know how to use their sticks in the defensive and the neutral zone. They really know how to trap in the neutral zone and get in force dump-ins or giveaways. And in the defensive zone, like I said, they really like to hit and really know how to use their sticks, especially like up near the blue line. So it's been really good to see.
Definitely. On the point of that that fourth line, Radek Faksa has been sorely missed. He's missed
True.
the past few games. I believe he's got like a cut on his leg from an opponent's like skate or something like that. That was a while ago, and he came back for I believe one game and then was back out. I think he's got maybe an infection, so hopefully he can return because he was a big part of that bottom line's ability to be so sound defensively. They've looked really good in transition as well. You sort of hinted at it earlier a little bit. Defense begets offense, right? I mean, that's where it starts. In recent games, especially since like late December, like I want to say that either that sort of lengthy Canadian road trip or right after it with that sort of shorter Florida road trip, it feels like Montgomery has said a lot about game management since then, sort of, and that starts on the defensive zone. And when you're so sound defensively, obviously that allows you to create offensive chances. So that's been huge. Really getting the puck back up the ice and transition. It feels like they've been able to create a lot of odd man rushes while also limiting those on their own end. Last night's game in Columbus excluded. That one in the first half sort of looked a little rough defensively. They were giving up a lot of odd man rushes in that game, but they obviously turned it around a little bit at the end and started to come back, but it wasn't enough. But that's a whole other thing. Anything you want to add on the offense there? Because there's one player I want to talk about here in a sec, but I just wanted to see if you have anything else there offensively. How this set like defensive soundness has really contributed to offense as well.
Yeah, mostly just in creating odd man breaks and or creating rush chances, even if it is sort of even strength. Again, it feels like finishing has still been a little bit of a thing holding this team back, but they're offensively getting good looks once they do set up in the offensive zone. Although that's not what we're here to talk about. So I think nothing really big to add to what you already said.
Sure. Well, we've sort of danced around it a little bit already, talking about one big reason for why the Blues defense has looked so good lately. Cam Fowler. Cam Fowler, the Blues traded for him, brought him over from the Anaheim Ducks in mid-December, and since he came over, he has been playing like out of his mind. He's been fantastic. Whereas he had like 0 goals before coming to St. Louis. He's got himself up to 4 goals now. He's just looked so good, including 2 goals in the Winter Classic, his 1,000th game, so that was huge. But how valuable of an addition has Cam Fowler been? Like, what can you say about what he has meant to this team already in less than a month, in such a short time, like 3 weeks, something like that? I mean, it's been crazy.
Yeah, I mean, it has been crazy. I don't think anyone saw this outcome coming. Obviously, when the trade was announced, there were a lot of really mixed or pretty sour reactions to it. I think
Yeah,
you and I and some Blues fans thought that it was still a good move, but nothing really to, you know, call the cows home about. Is that the saying? Whatever.
write home
Um,
about.
like until the cows come home. I think I cross wires there.
Yeah,
Regardless, he's been so like an offensive force, which
it's
is
crazy.
just crazy. Yeah, I mean, he's been a really really solid defenseman his whole career, but this is like prime Cam Fowler.
Yeah,
All he had to do was play with the best defenseman in the world, Colton Parayko, soon to be Four Nations MVP, right? But yeah, no, he's been awesome, and he's been the thing I see in Cam Fowler's game that I feel like shouldn't work, but it does. And I guess that's a credit to Montgomery or Pareko or the lines that play with him. I think it's probably Pareko of those things. Is instead of creating quality scoring chances, Fowler looks to create quantity scoring chances. He will fire pucks down low or at the net, seemingly like at not at random, but all the time. And sometimes, he'll be dumping it in and there won't be anyone like chasing on the far side boards. So it'll just be a giveaway to like 4 offensive or opponent skaters. My goodness. And then you get the line change, but you can't even pressure the start of their rush. But anyways, um, but sometimes he'll just be shooting pucks at the net when like there's no screen, there's no tip in front. He's kind of got a man on him. There's no clear shooting lane. But at the amount that he's putting out, it seems like 2 out of every 3 opportunities that he's taking to release the puck off his stick has been really, really good. Obviously, in that Winter Classic game, had 2 goals, and he's been a goal scorer since we acquired him. He's been really good at creating, at setting plays up to start. I wouldn't say that he's necessarily like creator of offense in himself,
yeah,
because I think he does really rely on his teammates to do that. But he sets up these opportunities for them to do that. It's just sometimes they're not ready for it. But yeah, the quantity chances of Cam Fowler have really been able to be a strength of this team because we have so much youth and physical play that even not from the youth, like Braden Shen seems to just be revitalized this season. Like he's been
yeah,
great, which is just awesome to see because you hate to see your captain be so poor, and he has not been. And so I think this team is so weird. Like credit to Alex Steen and Doug Armstrong, because
for
this
sure.
team is so perfectly set up to support a guy like Cam Fowler, and just they're like perfectly working together to unlock each other's offense, which has been just awesome. Like it's so fun to see.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, on an individual basis, he's been amazing. He's got the most goals for per 60 of any player since he arrived on the Blues with 4.06. But to your point of his value really coming from how he contributes to team offense, like when he's on the ice, the Blues shooting percentage is 14.74. Like and that's the highest of any player on the Blues for on ice like rate stats. He's been fantastic, really setting up plays, and I think his willingness to sort of shoot it from long range areas has been really big for the Blues, creating rebound opportunities where it really allows forwards to capitalize on those high danger chances right in the slot. And I mean, if he can score on those two, then fantastic. It feels like he's like just been so good at sniping it from mid to long range, and that's just been fantastic to see, and really has revitalized this team on both ends. It seems in a lot of ways like this is, like you said, exactly what the Blues needed right now, and another Doug Armstrong masterclass. So credit to him for making this move, because it's really turned this team around. It feels like. One thing that I think has been really valuable about Cam Fowler is what he's done to the overall sort of defensive pairings. The deployment of defensemen since he's arrived has been a lot more consistent, and I think a lot more like appropriate for each player in terms of where they're being played on the roster night to night. It felt like, I mean, Broberg got off to a fantastic start, and I think deserved his spot on the top pair whenever he was being played there. I think he earned it for sure. But when he came back from injury, it was just a little bit too much too fast, I think, for him, and he fell behind a little bit. He's definitely slowed down since then. Um, and the addition of Cam Fowler has has bumped him back down, I think, to where he belongs right now with how he's performing right now on the second pair, and he's playing alongside Justin Falk. That has looked really really good for Broberg, I would say, and that's where he started the season, and that's how he got off to his hot start, right? So I think if you can rediscover that playing on the second pair, then that's fantastic. And if Cam Fowler wasn't here, then I don't know that Broberg would be utilized that way, which I think he should be. And then also Ryan Suter, right? We saw him taking over those top pair responsibilities when Nick Leddy went out, and when Philip Broberg was out as well. And I think it was really solid. That was really working for the Blues for a while. But for any contender, you probably don't want Ryan Suter playing on your top pair. And so since Cam Fowler arrived, Ryan Suter's been playing on the third pair, alongside a younger player, a Scott Perunovich or a Matthew Kessel, or Tyler Tucker's been getting some time as well. And that feels much closer to where you want players to be deployed now that Cam Fowler is here. And I think that has just been huge for the Blues and incredibly valuable. One thing that I think is interesting, I want to get your thoughts on this. Like whenever Falk was out recently, I can't remember if it was like a day-to-day injury or if it was maybe an illness or something. I can't remember exactly what it was, but he missed just a couple games, I believe. And when he was out, Fowler was playing on the second pair, wasn't he, with Broberg, and Suter was bumped up to the top pair, I believe. And I just thought that was interesting. Like, does that say anything to you about the players that Broberg and Parayko and Suter are?
I think the deployment has been. I think it's been pretty consistent for the defense, actually, and I think I trust. It feels like they all know what they want. Each player's role to be, and so I think it was probably just a like someone needed a night type thing. If I had to guess.
Yeah, that's fair. I just thought it was interesting. Like it feels like Jim Montgomery is really committed to letting Philip Broberg continue to sort of get those second pair minutes, and I think it's a credit to Cam Fowler that he's sort of trusted to play alongside, the veteran that is Parayko, that is established, obviously a top defenseman, but he's also the kind of player that can play alongside someone like Philip Broberg, who's still developing a little bit and has a lot to learn. I just thought it was interesting that instead of keeping him on that top pair and just moving Suter up to play with Broberg, that there was sort of more of that switching around on both pairs.
Mm-hmm.
But is there anything you want to add on the overall sort of defensive pair deployment and how Cam Fowler has impacted that?
Nothing really at 5-on-5. I am interested in the special teams units and how they're using those. Cam Fowler has recently been playing on the top power play, and it's looked okay. I think I would prefer probably to see him on the second power play, but we have seen less of Justin Falk on the power play, so that's sort of an interesting development in itself. Also on the penalty kill, it seems like Suter is still the PK guy, and I don't know how I feel. I personally don't love that, but and Fowler's been on the second PK, so I guess just something to monitor as their play, because I don't think it's been atrocious so far, except maybe Suter, but maybe I could definitely eat crow about that. I think it's just interesting to watch the deployment on the special teams, which have still kind of been struggling, although we've seen some more production as of late. But
yeah, for sure. My last question on Cam Fowler before we move on here is he the best player that's ever played with Colton Parayko? Just in terms of like how they complement each other and the results that we see with these two players. Like, is this the best pairing for Parayko that we've like seen to this point?
you mean like ever?
Maybe ever. I don't know. What do you think?
Probably not ever. I mean, I mean, I would assume Parayko and Petrangelo were together at some point. No.
Maybe, but like, was Parayko this good then?
Well, he's been pretty good throughout his career.
I guess so. I don't know. I just feel like
Since the departure of Alex Petrangelo, definite maybe.
okay. I just feel like we haven't seen a compliment to Colton Parayko that has worked this well in a while, and I've just really enjoyed seeing Cam Fowler up there. But hopefully he can keep up this hot stretch over the next few weeks. This is sort of an important stretch for the Blues, where they're playing mostly. I mean, of the next 16 opponents or so, it's about half and half when it comes to teams that are in playoff contention versus teams that are currently not in playoff contention. So it's an even mix, and I think it'll be important for them to take advantage of those games against sort of lesser teams, but also a real test of who this team is, to play up to those teams that are in playoff contention, particularly as they start to play more Central Division opponents here in the second half of the season coming up. So, but let's get there in a second and close out this sort of defensive discussion real quick. Let's talk about the third pair a little bit. This is something that you wanted to talk about. What have you seen on the third pair defensively that's been interesting to you?
I think there's two things that interest me, and I'll start with the less interesting is who they've been playing with. Well, the left side, I guess, of the third pair, it was for a time Kessel, and Kessel is still just doesn't seem ready for the NHL, but then he goes down to Springfield, and I think he's been playing pretty well since then. So I don't know if there's like a hockey equivalent of a quad A player, but then there's Tyler Tucker, who I have never really been that bullish on, and he's been okay. I think he's been better at the NHL level than Kessel, but it feels like he's sort of already at his maximum, his ceiling. And then, of course, with the departure of P.O. Joseph, that leaves the depth chart to only at this point Nick Leddy, who is still, we have no timetable for his return. So that's, what exactly, once he does return, I think there's a genuine question whether or not Tyler Tucker and Nick Leddy should, or, Scott Perunovich should be on this bottom pair, which then leads to my next point, that the Scott Perunovich question has been something that has just plagued me throughout this season. I can't escape it. I just don't know what to do with this player, man. Like he has still looked really good. Oh, and then Suter, of course. Suter seems to be the piece that's set for the time being. But so you've got Suter, Tucker and Perunovich, and then once Nick Leddy returns, to me it seems like Tucker should be the odd man out, but he's been getting a lot of playing time. But the other one you would put in is Scott Perunovich, and it feels like this team has given up on Scott Perunovich, and I think kind of understandably, just because there's been such a track record in history of disappointment for Perunovich. He has looked a lot better in the past couple months. So could this be another Jake Wallman? Could this be another Vince Dunn? I don't know. I don't think he looks that good, but he does look creative offensively,
For
which
sure.
would lead me to think that he would benefit with a defensive guy like Suter. Um, but also he's still undersized, still has sometimes had health problems, and so I don't know what to do about Scott Prunovich, but I'm curious what you think about the third pair, if Suter should be the guy, and then also the Scotty P question.
I think Suter should definitely be the guy. You know, we saw him playing alongside Pareko, like I said, for a while, and it was working. But I don't want to I wouldn't want to push our luck with that and keep sort of deploying him at that top pair level. I think he's capable, and it's good that if someone goes down, he can step in like that. But that's to me, that's not where he belongs. He just can't hang offensively. The defense looks fine, but it really feels like when he's up there, he's slowing Pareko down offensively, and the results for that pair, uh, you know, in the offensive zone just aren't there. And so I think Suter is much more capable of playing playing a role on the third pair and playing sort of a positive role on the third pair. I think that's definitely where he belongs. I've said this a few times, I really like deploying someone like that who's so established and has such good experience at the NHL level, a veteran who's been around a while and is sound defensively. I really like deploying someone like that alongside a younger player who's still learning the game. Not only that sharing of knowledge and having that young player be able to watch what Ryan Suter does and how he goes about his games, particularly on the defensive side, like I said, but also for a young player like a young defenseman, 9 times out of 10, where they need to develop more of their game is on the defensive side, and I think Ryan Suter can help sort of pick up some of the slack for a young defenseman who isn't quite developed defensively, and so I really like seeing him deployed on that third pair with alongside a Tyler Tucker, Matthew Kessel, or Scott Perunovich. On the Scott Perunovich point, he's looked really good under Jim Montgomery. The
Yeah,
results aren't there, but in terms of how the team
yeah,
has looked when he's on the ice, the individual results aren't there. But when he's on the ice, the team has looked really good. When it comes to offense, they he. I'm getting ahead of myself. Words are hard, but when he's on the ice at 5-on-5, the Blues Corsi for percentage is 52.65. That means they're dominating the shooting game when he's on the ice. That's the third highest for any player on the Blues. And then another interesting point is that when he is on the ice at 5-on-5, he's got the second highest expected goals for percentage at 59.85. It's really funny because the number one expected goals for percentage at 5-on-5 on the ice is Tyler Tucker, but um, I don't know about that one. Overall, I feel like Scott Perunovich has done a really good job of setting up offense and really helping the team create plays, get shots off. But it feels like the results aren't quite there for him, and that's the frustrating part. Um, but I'm encouraged by that. I think he looks a lot better than he did under Drew Bannister. He wasn't getting played a whole lot, and I think that you know, obviously when he's not getting a chance, he's not going to be able to look good. And I think when he's been given the chance, which again has mostly been under Montgomery, he has looked good. I think he's looked maybe better than he has in his NHL career to this point. Um, would you agree with that? Like, do you think he looks better than he ever has?
oh, absolutely, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. Obviously he's an RFA again at the end of the season, and he's up for a new contract. Do you want them at this point, if he continued to play just sort of the way he's been playing, maybe didn't take a huge step, but maybe didn't regress again, if he just sort of continued this sort of style of play, would you want them to bring him back?
It is truly just befuddling to me. The Scott Perunovich question is just so I loop every time. Okay, so to actually give a response, it depends on the rest of the defense. If we're still paying Falk, Krug, Fowler, Broberg's about to get paid. then no. I don't want to have that many defensemen under contract to be like that's just too much money to invest in your defense for the talent that they have. Just from a pure number of players standpoint, I don't think that would be the right move. If they can move on from one of those big contracts or multiple, then yeah, I probably would give him a new contract. It's really difficult, and because I just don't know what his value is like on the market, trade market or contract wise either.
Yeah,
Um,
you're
probably
probably not getting
some,
much for him.
yeah, and probably some rebuilding team would like, Blues, Holloway and Broberg him away, but it also sort of depends on the rest of his season if he can actually produce and actually put up real numbers instead of the what if defenseman. So
For sure.
in terms of what I bring him back, I think it just depends on the rest of the defense construction. Because I don't think Perinovich should be the first or maybe even second priority on the blue line.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, in his defense, getting deployed on the third pair, which I think is where he belongs. I'm not saying he should be elevated, but he's getting played alongside the lower forward lines, and I think if he were being deployed alongside better offensive players that could maybe help finish the plays that he helps set up, I think that could look a lot better for him, probably in the assists category. But um, I mean, you'd probably rather have someone like a Pareko, a Fowler, and a Broberg playing in those spots. But that's just sort of in his defense. But yeah, like you said, the individual results aren't there. The team results with him on the ice look encouraging, but I think if they're going to re-sign him, I probably do want to see some improvement in terms of the individual results because it feels frustrating for him. And like you said, it's just so befuddling to see. Like it's tough to know what to make of him, and it's also tough to know is he valuable enough to get a decent return on the trade market. I don't know. Um, but Ryan Suter is on a 1 year contract, so he's probably going to be gone. I doubt they'll re-sign him. But Torrey Krug will probably come back. Yeah, you don't want to have too many defensemen, but at this point, it feels like they've got a lot of older defensemen. Would you rather have a younger defenseman? I don't know, but the Scott Perunovich question is a befuddling one for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Let's get to the big topic here: the Blues playoff hopes. All right, now according to Money Puck right now, if you look at their sort of big playoff wedge diagram, which is a really cool one, the Blues have a 28.7% chance of making the playoffs as it stands today. Um, that's a lot better than it looked, a couple months ago. I believe it was it was under 10 or something like that, and we were sort of confused as to why it was so low. Now it's a lot higher at 28.7%. And I think a big reason for this has been the defensive improvements that we've been talking about all episode. When you look more sound defensively and that defense helps beget offense, obviously the team's going to look a lot better. Fowler has looked amazing. The goalies have sort of regressed back to the mean a little bit in a positive sense, and that has helped a lot. Robert Thomas is back. He's healthy. Jordan Kyrie's playing like crazy. Dylan Holloway looks amazing. It feels like vibes are pretty high overall for the Blues right now. Do you think they have a chance of making the playoffs? Do you think this is legit? Yeah, what are your thoughts here?
Do I think they have a chance? Yeah, absolutely. I still think my expectations are where they were at the beginning of the season and into the season. I hate to be so unfun, but I still think we're on the outside looking in. Looking at the standings right now, the Blues are technically fifth in the Central, but with the stipulation that that is because of games played. The Utah Hockey Club are 1 point behind us with two less games played. And if I'm being honest, I do think they're at worst an even team with us, and might even be a little bit better. Luckily, it seems like the Predators' comeback is not happening anytime soon. They are way too far back in the race
Yeah.
to have any shot. But we're on the outside looking in, and we have more games played and still a lot of ground to make up. So it would, at this point, I'm not even sure that we can entirely say, or I don't think I would entirely say that it's even in our hands anymore. I don't necessarily think that we can control this fate, because the Pacific is heating up. Calgary has just been knocked out of the playoffs by the Canucks, who have been sort of tapering off, but they were one of the best teams last year and still look to be a pretty good team, because the Oilers are back and now they're back to winning. So the Pacific is gonna have a representative in the wild card, unless we can be better than the Canucks or Kings. Maybe the Kings will have a fall off coming, but they still have one of, if not the best team defenses in the league, with pretty solid goaltending and pretty solid offense. Really, all of their advanced metrics look a lot better than the Blues. And then in our division, I mean, the Stars are still a little bit behind the Wild, and the Jets, who aren't on as ridiculous of a pace anymore, but they've definitely built themselves enough of a cushion to be in the playoffs, unless they totally collapse, which is just already hard to see happen. And then it's the Stars and Avs ahead of them, who are both tied at 49 points, the Stars having played 2 less games. And so we're going to have to be better than either the Wild, Stars, and Avs, who have been beating us consistently all year, or the Kings, Oilers, and Canucks, who have been tough plays. I know we beat the Canucks. I don't believe we've played the Oilers yet. Or no, we did play the Oilers and lost. And I don't believe we've played the Kings yet. I could be making a mistake on that. But regardless, these are all really good teams. And I said that December was kind of the prove your medal month for the team. And I think they proved that they're just a little bit behind. They couldn't quite win enough games. If we had won even 1 or 2 more games, we'd be in a playoff spot right now. But it's those little losses that sort of do you in, and I think that there's a little bit too much ground to make up for it. And I'd love to be wrong. And I think having what'd you say the statistic was? 20-something%?
28.7, I think.
I think I'd put it probably around there. That might be a little high for my liking. I would probably say more like a 20% at most.
Okay.
I think this team can make the playoffs if everything falls right, but it feels like their destiny is sort of out of their hands right now. And I want that to motivate them. I want that to know that they are on the outside looking in, not even like they're in a playoff race, but not in the playoff picture. They're expected to miss the playoffs. I want that to light a fire under this team, and I think it can, but we just have to see it. And they have, in the chances they've been getting, they've been squandering them.
It's all fair. I gotta say, it's more fun talking to a believer, Alec, but you make good points. I think if they're gonna make the playoffs, it's gonna have to be a wild card spot, right?
Absolutely.
They're not competing for a Central Division spot at this point. They're competing probably for that last wild card spot. They're probably not even going to be good enough to get the first wild card spot. They're going to have to make it just in with that last wild card spot. We're at the point now where we kind of know what all these teams are, like you were saying. And in the Central Division, you've got the Jets with 56 points, the Wild with 54, the Stars with 49, the Avalanche with 49, and then the Blues with 42, right? Those first 4 teams, they're all about in the same range of, hanging around 50 to mid 50. And the Blues are closer to lower 40s, right? And it seems like we know who these teams are, and the Blues are not on the same level as those 4 so far this season. And it would take them playing out of their mind to catch up with those teams. Same thing with the top 3 in the Pacific. You've got the Golden Knights with 57, and then the Kings and Oilers tied with 51. Again, in the 50s to mid 50s in terms of total points. All of those teams are around the same caliber in terms of point percentage and the kind of teams that they are. And the Blues just aren't there, right? So it's going to have to be with this second wild card spot where the picture looks like this: the Canucks at 44, the Flames at 43, the Blues at 42, Utah at 41, that's probably who's competing. You've got the Kraken at 37 and the Ducks at 36, but like, you know, beyond probably Utah, none of those teams are going to make it for sure. I wouldn't say. Utah do have uh, 2 games in hand on the Blues and could feasibly pass them in the standings. So do I mean every team above them in the wild card race also has games in hand on them. So it does look tough, but they are going to have to be competing with the Canucks, the Flames, and Utah, and the Hockey Club, right? And I mean, they just played in late December to early January. They played a stretch of teams that you'd hope that they could get a streak going against them. They played the Red Wings, the Predators, the Sabres, the Blackhawks, the Senators, and the Blue Jackets last night. Um, Against those 6 teams, they went 4-2, which is pretty good. They beat Detroit and Nashville. They lost to the Sabres. I mean, that's kind of inexcusable at this point. And then a couple of really convincing wins against the Blackhawks and the Senators, followed up with a kind of a stinker against the Blue Jackets. It just seems like they're unable to put something together in games after back-to-back wins, right? So in games where they have an opportunity to get a 3-game win streak going, they are 0-6-1. So they're just unable to put together an extended run, it feels like, and that's just been a huge issue for this team. The upcoming, month, I think there are some really interesting games to sort of look at here. They're about to play the Wild on Tuesday on January 7th. That'll be a tough one. It's in Minnesota, and as I said, they're not really competing with Minnesota for a Central Division spot. But I think it will be interesting to see how they measure up with one of the top teams in the league so far. Then they play Anaheim and Columbus. They've got to put together wins against both of those teams. Like, now is the time that you can't just be laying an egg against teams that are that bad. You have to take advantage of
Hey, the Blue Jackets are almost in a playoff spot.
Blue Jackets have looked good. You're right. Their forward group has actually looked pretty solid.
Get off my Jackets.
The Jackets don't look like they're gonna. I mean, they've got according to Money Puck, according to this wedge thing, they've got like a 5, like maybe a 6% chance of making the playoffs. They look better than like the Jackets of last season and all that for sure. They definitely look better, but I think they're kind of falling off a little bit. I'm just saying, after last night's loss, they have to come back and beat that team. And then back-to-back games against Calgary. That's a team that you're competing with in this wild card race. It would be fantastic if they could win both of those. That would be huge for this race. And then right after that, they're playing Utah Hockey Club, another team that they're competing with. And then a few games later, guess what? They're playing Vancouver. And that's all in January. They play Utah again early February. That's like a pretty big stretch of games. And then the teams that you're not competing with in the wild card race, for the most part, they're either teams that are pretty bad, like Anaheim and Columbus, or teams that are really good. You've got Vegas, Dallas, Colorado in that mix as well, Edmonton, and then the Panthers. Like, it's going to be a big month here in January. I think at the end of this month, Alec, I promise to you, all right, at the end of this month, I will commit to either being in or out on this team. I've been flip-flopping at the beginning of the season. I was like, I'm in, playoffs, let's do it. And then, like, I think when maybe like when Broberg went down, or like around then when he and Thomas were both injured, I was like, I'm out, man. This team can't do it. And then Monty was hired, and then they went on that winning streak. I was like, I'm back in. And then they lost a few, and I was like, oh, I don't know. So for a while, I've been abstaining from saying one way or another. But I feel like at the end of this month, we'll probably know like what this team. We kind of know what they are, but we'll know if a playoff spot is a real possibility, or if it has just been like high vibes lately. Did you see that video from Spit and Chicklets? That the Barstool Hockey podcast has been floating around, where they're sort of talking about the Blues as maybe a sneaky cup pick. I mean, what do you think? It's cool to see the Blues like being talked about that way in national media, where for a long time it feels like everyone's been out on them. They looked really, really solid in the Winter Classic against a pretty bad team, but still, I don't know. It's interesting.
Yeah, to get recognition was cool. I think a couple things you brought up there are really important to me. In like you said, in games where they had a chance to start a winning streak, start to build a cushion, 6-1. That's 7 losses, 0 wins. That's
Yeah.
awful. And only 1 point to show for it too. That's really been the theme of the season here, is unable to build a cushion and not even put distance from themselves in the pack, but just keep pace with the rest of the winning teams. That's what winning teams do, is go on win streaks, even if it's 3 or 4 games.
Yeah.
And that was, I think December was their chance to do that. And that's why I'm saying that I think this month, I don't know how high my hopes are. But hey, prove me wrong. Please, I would love for this team to prove me wrong and start winning some of these games. Because as you said, these are some really, really important standings games. The Wild coming up have had a pretty poor-ish, by their standards at least, stretch of play. They were 7-7 in the month of December. Have won their first 2 games into 2025, but I mean, they're still a good team, but definitely not on the ridiculous winning pace that they were at the beginning of the season. So they're fallible, and we could sort of hang with them. Like you said, the Ducks, not a playoff team. The Blue Jackets are a fringe playoff team, but you got to get your wins somewhere. And then huge games coming up after that. 2 at home against the Flames. That's like, those 2 games could decide the wild card 2 spot by the end of the season, like given tiebreakers and everything. That's a week from this Tuesday and a week from this Thursday. So January 14th and 16th. Go to those games to cheer on the boys if you can, listeners, because those 2 games are going to be huge. And then the next Saturday, they go to Utah, another game that could decide the jockeying for playoff spots. And then, like you said, Vegas, who we sort of hung with but couldn't quite close it out early in the season. That loss looks pretty bad now, but we know that we can play with this team. Need to hopefully at least split that. And then Stars, Canucks, Avalanche. Like, they didn't build their cushion, so this is where they have to really prove their mettle. And from what they've shown, they can't do it, but prove us wrong and win these games and go on a win streak. Win. I mean, even in this stretch, I guess if they go 2 wins, 1 loss, 2 wins, 1 loss, I think that would be okay. But start to string something together here, because it's the time is now or else.
My eyes particularly are on those back-to-back Flames games, followed by that Utah game. I think after that point, maybe that's when I'll make a call one way or another. And
the last 3 games of January, being Stars, Canucks, Avalanche, are really, really important too.
It's tough. All right, let's finish out with some Winter Classic talk, because you went and it was a really fun game, really special game. It felt like before we do get there. If you would like this video, if you're new to Note News, and subscribe to our YouTube channel especially, that's the best way to help us out if you're enjoying what we're doing. And if you're on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, a follow and a rate of the podcast go a long way as well. And if you look over on this side of the screen, follow at Note News Pod on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. That's our socials, where we'll post news updates, fun posts, and when we're going live, so you can follow along and make sure to join in live each episode. Alec, so the Blues won 6-2 in the Winter Classic. They beat the Blackhawks in a resounding victory. It was awesome. Cam Fowler looked amazing. Jordan Binnington had a solid game. But you were there. I want to let paint a picture. What were the vibes? How was the game? What do you have to say about the Winter Classic?
The game was awesome. The vibes were awesome. And it makes me really excited for when the Blues do get back in the playoffs and we get playoff hockey back in St. Louis, because I know these fans and this crowd are going to show up, because boy, did they for the Winter Classic. There were definitely, I would say at the start of the game, there were definitely more home fans than away, but it was not like in any means a massive split. There was still a very large representation of Blues fans. Every time they would start a "Let's Go Hawks" chant, there would be a Blues almost just as, if not louder, than at the end of than when they say Hawks, and that was just so much fun back and forth there. Like, there was cheering all through. Like, the energy was so palpable as the stadium started to fill, and more bodies started shaking around. You could hear the talk start to rise. And then the national anthem started, and just the crowd was going crazy, like cheering all the way throughout. There was a loud "Home of the Blues" at the end there, which I was definitely a part of. Then the game started, and I mean, it was just back and forth, like chirping and chanting all the way until the first goal was scored pretty early in too. And then at that point, Hawks fans were like, "Oh man, this stinks," and Blues fans are like, "Yeah, let's go." And then the second goal hits, and that's when things started to really go crazy. Blues fans were like up, like you know, being boisterous, being loud, being awesome, really. And the Hawks fans are like, "Uh-oh, I've seen this one happen before." At the end of the first, they fire back, get one, and but the energy in the building had started to decrease.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the second period, the goals just flew, and I believe we exited the second period 5-1. And by the end of the second period, I think there were more Blues fans than Blackhawks fans, which is crazy to me for like the Winter Classic. Like those tickets were really expensive, and I got like not super expensive ones. Like they were really not easy to come by to like leave that game. I understand that it's bad, but like show your mettle as a fan base. It's honestly embarrassing.
Yeah.
And then and at that point, like Blues fans had taken over, and especially into the third period. I mean, there were more Blues chants than there were Hawks chants, and we were louder than they were in their own stadium. Like it was a complete domination on the ice and in the stands. It was awesome. Shout out to Towel Guy who was there. I didn't see him until the second goal, but then every time, except for I think the fifth goal, we didn't get to count off because there was a penalty and a quick goal off of it. But like every time, the stadium erupted for Towel Guy, especially by the sixth one. It was like it echoed after the silence from the Hawks fans once we counted down all six. So yeah, I mean, it was just a fun game. This rivalry, it is alive in that they definitely still hate us and we still love beating them.
Yeah.
But it definitely feels like big brother, little brother sort of holding him right at his head, and he's like swinging his arms, but he just can't really reach his body. Like, be grateful that we support the Blues and not the Blackhawks, because as an organization and as a fan base, woof. I had some funny interactions on the train ride home, and just like it had I can't get over it. The Winter Classic sports game event had grown Blackhawks fans, like grown men, questioning why they were even like sports fans in the first places and like rethinking their life decisions. I thought this was like a joke that people just threw around on the internet or whatever, but no, like there was genuine desolation on the train ride home. So I don't mean to gloat, but boy, it felt good, and it was a really fun game. The boys played really hard. You'll love to see Fowler play so well in his 1,000th. Bennington was standing on his head. You know he's going to be there in big games. The special teams looked great against the Hawks, who kind of have an underratedly like fine special teams unit.
Like their
our special teams, and their power play is all right. Our special teams played well, so in that one I would say it was kind of goaltending and just bad team, so not really anything to make any big conclusions about. But this team has the ability to put together some really good play, and it was a fun game
for sure. It looked awesome. I was watching from the TV, but looked like a lot of fun, and all the videos you were sending looked amazing as well. I've seen a lot of like criticism about the Winter Classic this year, but I feel like the league kind of flopped on it in a lot of ways, and it wasn't
they scheduled
the Blues.
Every other team to play during it.
I think the Blues and Blues fans proved that, like, when the Blues are in a big game like this, it's a good idea because they will show out, they'll show up, they'll support, they'll get rowdy. It's a lot of fun. But when you pick a team that's literally like the worst or bottom three in the league, like, of course you're not going to have it. Like, they only gave it to him probably because of Connor Bedard, who had a fantastic season last year, but has been a little more so-so this season by his standards. And it just feels like that was kind of a flop. Like maybe if they had picked a better team, better matchup, it could have been better. Um, Maybe if they didn't schedule 12 other games on that day, it could have been better. Made it the event of the day, and probably could have gotten more. It's crazy, but
That's so stupid.
Blues fans made it Busch Stadium North yet again. So really fun to see the Blues come out with a resounding victory in that one. But super awesome. Glad you went. That'll be a core memory. You'll remember that for a while. So that's awesome. Um,
Yeah.
well, stay tuned with what we've got going on. We've got an exciting episode coming up soon. We're hoping to get a special guest on to recap the World Juniors, where Blues prospects have looked fantastic, particularly Dalibor Dvorsky, and Jakob Stancil as well has looked really good. So stay tuned for that. If you want to know when we've got that episode coming up, the best way to do that is to subscribe to our YouTube channel to get updates, and follow us at Note News Pod on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, follow and rate us there. We really appreciate that. But thanks for tuning in to this episode of Note News. This was a fun one. We'll see you next time. And Alec, let me get a big ol' Let's Go Blues.
Let's go Blues!